Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurudevo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I think we're at the tail end of chapter 2, if I recall. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Mark, do you remember what verse we're on?
We're on verse 99.
Verse 99. Ch.2.
Satvaitat prithak bhute Dvaite bhumyati rupini Tattar Tadartha kriya loke Yatha dhrishta tathaiva sa. When the reality has been comprehended as non-dual and the world of duality has been differentiated, the pragmatic action, however, will continue as before.
So, this pragmatic action, this what we call vyavahara, this transactions in the world. What happens to our behavior when we realize the non-dual truth? Now, some scholars say the cause of all action is vasana. Vasana has inherent ignorance as its nature. Therefore, when realization happens, you drop dead. So if the person is walking around, they're not realized. They're still a seeker. Maybe they will be realized after they die. Brahmaloka. So what is the cause for the activity for the woman of realization? And we have three kinds of karmas that the scriptures talk about. Sanchitta karma, agami karma, and prarabdha karma. Sanchitta karma, the karmas of the past that have yet to fructify. If 2 lifetimes ago I wanted to be a Russian ballerina, I'm out of luck this lifetime. I don't have the right body. I wasn't born in Russia. Agami karma, karmas of the future that we set in place this lifetime. Oh, I studied singing and I really wanted to be a Metropolitan Opera star. It would have been so much better. Golly, if I'd only started my singing earlier and, all that sort of stuff. Both Sanchita karma and Agami karma is roasted in the fires of knowledge. The mark of the woman of steady wisdom is she's santosha, content. Doesn't need to be any different than this. Well, how did it get to be the way it is? Prarabdha karma, the force of the past maturing, the karma of this very life, right here, right now. Shankara will use a very beautiful image, and it's that of the hunter who's out hunting in the forest and sees a rustle in the bushes. And he pulls out an arrow because he wants to shoot the tiger, looses the arrow, then all of a sudden the tiger moves. Oh my gosh, it's a sacred cow. Oops. So the actions in this very life, your relationships, your conflicts, your jobs, kids, culture, your historical, your temporal perspective, all of that is the force of the past maturing. But the woman of knowledge knows ultimately the changing of circumstances has nothing to do with my fundamental serenity. So what does she do? Put the robot on automatic pilot. So the body is the hardware. Guna and karma, qualities of mind and the force of the past, they're the software. It's already programmed. Let it go. Let it do what it will do. Watch the movie. Will we make mistakes? Yes. But what is a mistake? A mistake is simply a worldly interpretation of events. Actually, there are most no mistakes. Perfection is outside of our worldly notions of virtue and vice, good and bad, honor and dishonor. We do our best. Let it go. Let it go. Woman of steady wisdom has given up the hope. I'll be happy when. It'll be better if. There's a wonderful story in Yoga Vasishta, the story of Chudala. Maybe some of you remember it. She and her husband, she gets realized he's a slow learner. But there's one phrase which I just love, and it's in the passive voice in the Sanskrit. And it says, the desire for siddhis arose in her. It's not that she thought, oh, it's going to be better if I have siddhis. It just arose. She followed it. Now, it's a literary device, so the story can continue. But that idea of things just arising, do what we do, and trust. So now Vidyaranya is going to go deeper into that whole notion that even though Sarvamaya, Sarvamananda, it's all Maya, it's all bliss. Yet we continue at the level of the equipment to fulfill our role in the divine Leela, the drama. Any thoughts or questions about this? Next verse.
Sankhyakanat Bauddharthe Jagat Bhedo Yatha Yatha Utprekshyate Nekayuktya Bhavatvesha Tatha Tatha. The followers of Sankhya, Vaishika, and the Buddhist and the other schools have established with quite an array of arguments the real nature of the multiplicity in the universe. Let them have these. We have no quarrel with them. In the pragmatic world, we too accept them all.
So, these particular schools posit that the phenomenal world is real. Vedanta thunders. This whole chapter has been about the fact, no, seen but not real. It's all adhyasa, superimposition. So the Vedantin does not argue with the other schools of thought. And what I like to always say, who we are speaks much louder than anything we can say. We don't fight until we fight. And then, of course, at the level of the equipment, at the level of the relative world, we interact like anybody else. Now, Swami Tapovanam lived a very ascetic life way up in the Himalayas, owned 3 kurtas, that was it, the begging bowl, lived in a mud hut, would only take 1, 2, or 3 students at a time. Swamiji, on the other hand, Jagat Guru, traveled all over the world, wrote 40 books, answered every single letter written to him personally. In the early days, he would handwrite them. Later on, he would dictate them. But still, answered every single one. Yet both people, shunya, absolutely empty inside. What was different? Their prarabdha. So, not every person of realization ends up as a teacher. In fact, probably most of them don't. It's just another shtick. It's just another job. Guna and karma. Next verse.
Avagnatam Sadadvaitam Nishankair Ranya Abhidhi Evam Ka Shatirasmakam Tattadvaitam Avajanatam. There are philosophers who, holding an opposite view, disregard the real non-dual entity. That does not harm us, who, following the Veda, reason and experience, are convinced of our own unshakable position and therefore have no regard for their conclusion.
Yes. So some people will say there is no self. The Vedas are wrong. I'm a Buddhist. There is no permanent self. Or they may be materialists. All this is just superstition. The yogi, oh, would you like a cup of tea? No fight. Again, back to Yoga Vasishta. Now, I think it's in Yoga Vasishta by Tripura Hasya, where there's this great debate in the hall of a great Brahmin. Janaka, it was in the hall of Janaka, not a Brahmin. And there were all these, the son of Varuna comes and engages all these Brahmins in debate. They fight back and forth. It's a long story. But the only one who knows is this woman, ascetic with matted locks. It's just there in the back of the hall. She's silent. She's the one who's able to resolve the doubts. But she speaks from direct experience. Next verse.
Taitavagnya susthita चेद्वैते स्थिरा भवेत् स्थैर्यै तस्या पुमानेश जीवन्मुक्त इतीर्यते. When the intellect disregards the notions of duality, it becomes firmly established in the conception of non-duality. The person who is firmly rooted in the conviction of non-duality is called a Jivan Mukta, liberated in life.
So again, both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. What is the means of knowledge for knowing the self? The self itself knows the self. And the great cosmic joke is everybody already has it. But what is bondage? Bondage is nothing more than the deeply rooted conviction that I'm bound, meaning I think I'm my body plus the personality. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction based on direct experience. Not that I'm a realized person, but I am Brahman. This absolute conviction that no personal sense of self is real. This deep understanding that all I'm experiencing in the phenomenal world is like a dream. It's the play of mind. Whose mind? There is no who. It's just mind. get involved. Where does the Jivan Mukta's realization go at night? Gone. Like everything else in deep sleep. Next verse.
एषा भ्रामी स्थिति पार्थ नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यते स्थित्वा स्याम् अन्तकालेऽपि ब्रह्मा निर्वाणमृच्छति. Sri Krishna says in the Gita, quote, "This is called having one's being in Brahman, O Partha. None attaining to this become deluded. Being established therein, even at the last moment, a man attains to oneness with Brahman."
Yes. And here using the word nirvana, blown out. All our strivings, all our strugglings cease. The shift between the dreamer and the waker is an identity shift. I'm in the dream, I'm identified with the dream body, I'm afflicted by a dream world, and I wake up. Oh, thank God, here I am in my bed. Shift between the ego state and being a knower of Brahman is subtle, but even more profound. Stop the mind. Notice the knower. And that phony self, that shadow self. Oh, what's there? Chidananda Rupa. Shivoha. Shivoha. Don't believe me. Don't believe Vidyaranya. Go there. Find out. Next verse.
सद्वैते नृते द्वैते यत् अन्येन्यैक अवीक्षणम् तस्यान्तकालस्तद्भेद बुद्धिरेव न चेतरः. Quote, "At the last moment," end quote, means the moment at which the mutual identification of the illusory duality and the one secondless reality is annihilated by differentiating them from each other, nothing else.
Yes. So here Vidyaranya says at the last moment doesn't mean when you die. And it does mean when you die. It means when that identification with the ego dies. Rooted in that knowledge. I am Atma Brahma. The self is Brahman. All this world is Brahman. Brahma Satyam, Jagat Nitya. Brahman alone is real. Names and forms, the Jagat itself. Nitya. Who's next one?
यद्वान्त कालप्राणस्य वियोगोऽस्तु प्रसिद्धितः तस्मिन् कालेऽपि न भ्रान्ते गतायाः पुनर्गमः. In common parlance, the expression, quote, at the last moment, end quote, may mean, quote, at the last moment of life, end quote. Even at that time, the illusion that is gone does not return.
So even if we interpret it when you die, some of the scriptures say, oh, if you die in the second half of the year, you go to the world of the ancestors. You got to die in the front part of the year. Swamiji died in August. Oops. I tell you, if you know who you are, when the body falls off, it will be much more like getting a haircut. Right now, I can pull on my hair. Yeah, I'm attached a bit to it. But you go to the barber, snip, 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 snip. There it is, lying on the floor of the beauty salon or the barber shop. But where are you? You're not on the floor. Oh, look. It's gotten so gray. It's gotten so white. Then the body, just like the hairs, swept up and put into the trash. Nothing happens. And even while the body is around, anytime you stop and notice the knower, have you changed? Still me. Next verse.
Niroga upavishto va, ranno va viluthan bhuvi, murchito va tyajat vesha, pranan bhrantirna sarvatha. A realized soul is not affected by delusion, and it is the same whether he dies healthy or in illness, sitting in meditation or rolling on the ground, conscious or unconscious.
Yes. So there's all these stories that, oh, you need to be sitting in the lotus posture and fully conscious when you leave the body. Some yogis do that. Swamiji was on an operating table with his chest carved open. It doesn't matter. Just like if you have a nightmare, it doesn't touch you. True story. True story. We're going back to the 80s. And I had a student named Michael Strong. He was a simple fellow, tall, skinny drink of water, and he was a printer, simple working class guy. And he had AIDS. And in those days, AIDS was a death sentence. And he had Kaposi sarcoma, which was an AIDS-related cancer, and it attacked his brain. So he would have these periods of total dementia, total illusion, delusion. And we were quite honest with one another. I was over visiting. He was quite frail and sick. He was bedridden at this point. And I remember saying, Michael, what's it like to lose your mind? Just lying there. Just another dream, Jim. Just another dream. Such a yogi. And I can remember his parents were in the other room in the kitchen, and he was listening to them. Then he turned and looked at me and he says, "They just don't understand. They just don't understand." What a yogi. What a beautiful, peaceful transition. Did he go unconscious before he finally left the body? Yeah. Nothing yet touches the self. And temporary things that happen of illness, suffering, no big deal. The two will pass. As Ram Dass says, even dying is completely safe. Mark Herman, did you know Michael Strong, or had he passed before you came to work with me?
That's a very familiar name. I'm not sure I know him in person, but I've heard you tell that story.
Just an amazing young man. All right, next verse. How many more in this chapter? We should be about to the end, aren't we?
Yeah, 3 more. Okay. Dine dine swapta suptyao dhite vrismati apyayam puredhyu nanadhita syat tadvidhya na nashyati. The knowledge of the Veda acquired during the waking condition is daily forgotten during dream and deep sleep states, but it returns on the morrow. Similar is the case with the knowledge of it is never lost.
Yes. So Krishna also says this in Gita. The end of the 6th chapter, Arjun says, "What if I don't make it this lifetime? Am I destroyed?" Krishna says, "You can't take your money with you, you can't take your family with you, you can't take your possessions with you, but you do take your yoga with you." Even just like for the person who is well versed in the Vedas, when he goes to sleep, what does he know? I know nothing. In the morning he wakes up, he's still Vedadit, or Vedas. So also, don't worry. And don't even worry when you have moments where you get triggered or deluded. No big deal. Just proud of you. Overtime. Next verse.
Pramanotpadita vidya pramanam prabalam vina na nashyati na vedantat prabalam manamikshate. The knowledge of Brahman based on the evidence of the Vedas is not destroyed unless proved invalid by some stronger evidence. But in fact, there is no stronger evidence than the Vedas.
So, what is it that invalidates our knowledge? It's when we get contrary evidence. If I look down the BART tracks and I see the trains meeting in the distance, oh my God, I don't dare get on the train. It's going to crash. I get on the train and it goes down the tracks and I see that vanishing point recede. Oh, optical illusion. It did not contradict what I'd been taught, but contradicted my belief that I was going to crash. And never do we come across an experience where the eternal nature of the ground of being is negated. It's always there. People frequently will begin the spiritual life. The world is real. God's a mystery. In the end, it's exactly the opposite. It's the world that's the mystery. God is yourself, and it's the only thing you will ever know for sure. Absolutely. One more in this chapter?
Yeah. Tasmad Vedanta Sansiddhim Sadvaitam na badhyate Antakale Pyato Bhuta Vivekani Vritti Sthita. Therefore, the knowledge of the non-dual reality, thus established by the Vedanta, is not falsified, even at the last moment, whatever interpretation be taken. So the discrimination of the elements from the non-dual reality surely ensures peace abiding or bliss ineffable.
Yeah. So, to summarize, what is the point of this chapter? In the second chapter, we are shown that these elements, earth, air, fire, water, and space, are related to perception. And that what we see as the waking state gross world is only a grossified or denser form of that. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. That it's not solid, it's not substantial. It becomes very easy to understand if we go to the dream state. You are the God of your dream. If you dream about a motorcycle, what's your dream motorcycle made of? Not metal and leather. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. All right, next chapter.
Tritiya Adhyaya, Pancha Kosha Vivekaha. Chapter 3, the differentiation of the five sheets. Guha hitam brahma yatat Panchakosha Vivekataha Bodham Shakyam Tata Kosha Panchakam Pravivichyate. Is it possible to know Brahman, which is, quote, hidden in the cave, end quote, that is the five sheets, by differentiating it from them? Hence, the five sheets are now being considered.
Yes, so the overarching understanding of this chapter, two elements. We're going to discriminate between the self and the not self. Don't even want to use that language after the last chapter. Between the subject and all perceived phenomena. Let's use that. To call out what is my essential nature. And the methodology here is if I thoroughly examine something and see that's what I am not, then I can let go of my identification with it. Let me see if I can give a more worldly example. Okay. Way back in 1970, I had a job in San Diego. I was the assistant to the vocational counselor at the Sharp Rehabilitation Center in San Diego. And we dealt largely with spinal cord injuries and head injuries. And if you've ever been around a rehab center, the vast majority of the patients were teenage boys because they're stupid and reckless. They're the ones who do these athletic stunts of diving into shallow ponds or skiing into trees and stuff like that. And what was one of the things I would see over and over again, you take some 17 or 18-year-old kid who's an athlete, and then all of a sudden he's a paraplegic or a quadriplegic. And at first, he's lost his identity. I'm no longer the stud on campus. But in time, they come to see I still have value. I'm still a person. I still have a life that's of value. So they have to renounce their identification with that former notion of self. And if they don't, they become suicidal. Yet most work through it. So you get the idea. These identifications with these ideas of self are incredibly powerful. Maybe you and I have known people who have been completely identified with a job and the income and the title that comes with it. And then because of some life circumstance, they lose that. And they lose their identity. This one person would say, Jim, I just need to find a new narrative. What am I going to say to people when they ask me, who am I? What do you do? I just don't have a narrative. He thought he was his narrative, his stories. So this is not just theoretical. This is not just theoretical. Any thoughts on this before we go on? The idea is, if I can see clearly what I'm not, I can let it go. So if it has a beginning and an end, if it occurs in time and space, if it has qualities or characteristics, most importantly, if it is an object of cognition, that's not me. All right, going on. Next verse.
Dehabhyantara prana, pranabhyantara manaha, tata karta tato bhokta, guhaseyam parampara. Within the physical sheath is the vital sheath. Within the vital sheath is the mental sheath. Still within the intellectual sheath or the agent sheath.
I think you skipped something.
Still within is the intellectual sheath or the agent sheath, and still within is the blissful sheath or the enjoyer sheath. This succession of one within another is the cave that covers the Atman.
Yes. So the modern image I like to use, it's like Russian nesting dolls. So you've got one large doll and you open it up and there's a little one inside, and you open it up and there's a third one inside, and you open it up There's a fourth one inside. Last one you opened up. There's a fifth one inside. You open that one up and nothing. So here he enumerates them. They are the Annamaya Kosha, the food sheath. Annam in Sanskrit means cooked rice. The next level in, Pranamaya Kosha, the vital energy sheath, vital air sheath. Next one in, Manomaya Kosha, the mental sheath. The next one in, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellectual sheath, which has within it this phenomenon called karta, meaning the sense of agency. The subtlest of the sheaths is the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath. All of those are upadi. They are equipments. They are not self. He went right to it, didn't he? Next verse.
Pitri bhukta na jate. Pitri bhuktan jadviryat. Jato anne naiva vardhate. Deha son mayonatma prak chordhvam tad bhavatah. The body, which is produced from the seed and blood of the parents, which are in turn formed out of the food eaten by them, grows by food only. It is not the self, for it does not exist either before birth or after death.
So the ancients had a bit of a misunderstanding of how insemination happens, not understanding when a woman was an estrus, thinking that it had to do when she was menstruating. Doesn't matter. The idea is the seed of the man, the egg of the woman, come from food. The whole body does. That's why it's called the food sheath. It's born, it grows up, it grows old, it gets sick, and it dies. We call it the food sheath because you consume a mountain of food in your 70, 80, 90 years and produce a mountain of food, which is food for worms. And in the end, the body itself, whether it's buried or cremated, becomes food for something. It's what it is. It is not who and what we are. When you were a child, you had a little body. You went through adolescence, your body changed. When you became an adult, your body changed again. Some of us are sliding down the backside of life. Body has changed again. Where did that 10-year-old body go? The 15-year-old, the 20-year-old. You look at a photo of yourself from back then, where is that body? Literally, down the drain of the shower, down the toilet. Gone. But you have been the knower. of all the changes in the body. Do you have any aches and pains in your body today? Scan it like you do at the winter retreats. Do you feel any sensations, any tickles, anything? You are the knower of all the sensations of the body. Subject, object, knower, known. Not it be, not this. Next verse.
पूर्वजन्मन्य सन्नेत जन्म संपादये कथम भावि जन्मन्य सत्कर्म न भुञ्ज न भुञ्जीतेह संचितम. This body did not exist in the previous birth, then how could it have produced this birth? For that would be an effect without a cause. Without existing in the future birth, it cannot enjoy the results of action accumulated here in this birth, and hence it would be a case of quote, one does and another enjoys the fruits thereof, end quote, which is unreasonable.
So, prior birth, purvam janma. Did it cause this birth? Well, that body didn't cause this body. My parents caused this body. What about a future reincarnation? No, I'll be dead. This body came into existence at my birth and will go out of existence as my death. If I have a memory of a prior incarnation, it wasn't this body. All right. Next verse.
पूर्णो देहे बलं यच्छन् नक्षाणां य प्रवर्तकः वायु प्राणमयो नासाव आत्मा चैतन्यवर्जनात्. The vital airs which pervade the body and give power and motion to the eyes and other senses constitute the vital sheath. It is not the self because it is devoid of consciousness.
So the prana maya kosha is traditionally divided into what we call the panchavayu, the five subtle airs. They are prana, apana, samana, dhyana, and udana, which cover the inhalation, exhalation, circulation, digestion, and thinking. It is the thing that animates the body, makes all the organs and instruments, legs, arms, nose, toes, do what they do. When you have a lot of prana, you're filled with a lot of energy. Oh, I'll go out, take on the world. If you know you're not feeling well or you haven't been sleeping well, you're over 70. No prana. But I am the knower of the energy. Now, there's something else that's implied here, and that is Kundalini. Kundalini is nothing more than a form of prana. It's just energy. Those of us who may study the various schools of Raja Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, Kriya Yoga, all sorts of names they have for it, have to do with moving energy around the body, raising the fundamental main energy, opening the chakras. But what Vidyaranya is saying here, while that may be a useful practice, just like for the physical body, going to the gym is a useful practice, all of this energy is jada. It's inert. Now, it can be intelligent. That seems contradictory, Jim. What do I mean by that? One of the things we have in yoga is what we call Shaktipat. Shakti means energy. Padati means to fly or to fall. It's when there's an anointing of spiritual force in us. It can happen spontaneously. It can happen through contact with the Guru. It can happen in deep meditation. It can happen by being in a holy place. But this Shakti is intelligent. It's inert. It's not conscious, but it's intelligent. It gets in us and it changes us. Let me see if I can give a more worldly example. Is oxygen conscious? But if you're in an airplane and there's a leak in the cabin and depressurizes, and the oxygen masks come down, and the oxygen knows where to go in your bloodstream, what to do in your cells. It works intelligently in the body. The body knows what to do with the oxygen. Our body and nervous system knows what to do with Shakti. But it's not conscious. Only the self. Many people can spend a lot of time all engaged in working with energy. Nothing wrong with it. But that's not it. That's something way beyond. All right, enough on that. Next verse.
Lina suktau vapuddhodhe vyapnuyadana yapnuyadanra vagraga chichayo peta dhirnatma vijnana maya shabda bhak. The intellect, which has the reflection of pure consciousness.
Did we skip one? We haven't done Manomaya.
Oh, that's right. I skipped one. ahantam mamatam dehe gehadau chakaroti yaha kamadhya vasthaya bhranto nasavatma manomayah. That which gives rise to the ideas of I and mine with regard to one's body, house, and so forth is the mind sheath. It is not the self because it has desires and is moved by pleasure and pain, is subject to delusion and is fickle.
So the mental sheath, I'll in shorthand say it's where feelings happen. Here he fleshes it out more. It's where we determine the quality of the things in the world. Whether it's pleasurable, whether it's not pleasurable, whether it's valuable, whether it's superfluous. Scriptures will say the mind is the world and the world is the mind. It literally creates my world and the way I see it is the mind. But the feelings, the judgments, the reactions are all jada, inert. One feeling can't know another feeling. I illumina. So the Manomaya Kosha is again another one of these nesting dolls. It is not so. Now let's repeat the one. The Chaya.
The intellect, which has the reflection of pure consciousness and which pervades the whole body up to the tips of the fingers in the waking state, but disappears in deep sleep, is known as the intellect sheath. It also is not the self because it too is changeable.
So the intellect sheath, again, he's got a shorthand. It's the organs of perception: hearing, tasting, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Intellect, buddhi, where thought is, also has what we call karta, the agent. Here he uses one of my favorite terms, chit chaya. Chaya in Sanskrit means both reflection and shadow. It's the borrowed light of awareness. I'm not going to get it out tonight, but usually in class when we talk about this, I'll bring out the mirror. You all remember when I bring out the mirror? Jory,
Yeah.
have you been in a class where I brought out the mirror?
I think so, yeah.
So I hold it underneath the LED lights, and then I shine the mirror in people's faces. And the question is there a light in the mirror or not? Well, there kind of is and there kind of isn't. So I can focus the light on Punit's face. I can turn it this way, focus the light on Saundarya's face. But I can't pull a light out of the mirror. What's in there is Deepa Chaya. It's a reflection of the lamp. What's the word in Sanskrit for like a light like that? It wouldn't be Deepa, would it?
Diya,
Diya?
Divyam.
Divya? Okay. Divya Chaya. Anyway. So the point is, in the subtle intellect, we have this experience of the individual knower of phenomena. That individual knower and the known world arise together. So, for example, I see the room from my viewpoint, which is different from what you see, from what you see, from what you see. but it's not a real luminous being. It's a reflected self. Of course, Shankara's classic image is the moon in the sky, shining in half a dozen jars of water. And you have 6 moons. The water and the moon is like the Vijnana Maya Kosha, the intellectual sheath. The moon in the jar is that Ch.2. Here it is Ch.3. It's the reflection of the moon. And if I go like this to the water in the jar, oh, the moon is broken. So what happens? Somebody says something mean to me. I am sad. I am unhappy. I am powerful. I am successful. I am a failure. I attribute to myself the qualities of the North Self. Just like when I break the water in the jar, I attribute to the moon the qualities of the water. Now, the real moon, you are never touched. Now, Chaya means not only reflection, but it also means shadow. So it's a phony self. And I love what Ramana Maharshi always says. If you introvert the attentive faculty, stay with the question, who am I? Go looking for this Chaya. See if you can find a Jim or a Puneet or a Saundarya. And it falls. It is like shining a light on a shadow. Something real is there. Aham. This Chaya can thicken and thin. When I'm engaged in some activity, I'm out dancing or making love or listening to music or painting. I don't have a thick sense of I-ness. When I'm standing in front of a huge room of people with hundreds on Zoom giving a presentation. Remember when you did that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did Saundari get kind of thick?
Yes.
Yeah. So how can it be you when you see it thicken and thin? But it's very close to the self. And that is the most difficult discrimination. To discriminate between aham and ahankara. Between chit and chit-chaya. All right. This is a good place to stop. And we'll go into the Anandamaya Kosha or continue with the Vijnanamaya Kosha next week. What verse are we on for next week?
Verse 8.
Verse 8. Om Purnamada Purnamitam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om